Hello, everybody. Justin, recovered alcoholic. Justin! Thank you, Dylan, for asking us to speak. It's always a pleasure to be asked to come somewhere before getting sober. A lot of people ask me not to come back. Anyway, I'm sober. I'm an alcoholic, real alcoholic, chronic alcoholic, hope of the hopeless variety. I have a sobriety date, November 23rd, 2012. So by the grace of God, I'm on the 10th year of this spiritual experience path that you guys have shown me. And
Justin, can you just speak into the microphone?
yes, is that better?
Yeah.
A little nervous, don't know why, but I'm going to do my best to convey my experience strength and hope. So, in case I didn't, I have a sponsor, right, Rick B. up in the Nevada Fellowship. He's got, Rick, 43 years sober. I've worked through the steps with him a couple times. I'm working with a sponsee right now. I worked the steps myself several times. I do regular meditation on a daily basis. I try to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm employed, which is pretty incredible if you knew it before. I'm engaged, which is just phenomenal most of the time. And what else is? I write 10 steps when things get bad. And, I try to seek a higher power of my own understanding, or the lack thereof. Essentially, before I jump into it, time is limited, of course. I'd like to tell you about what my day's been like today. So I woke up today earlier than I wanted to go to a job, which I never had before I got sober. Couldn't hold down a job. I got out of bed even though I didn't want to, and even though there was kind of like this drunken homeless man in my mind telling me not to get out of bed. We talked about the talking illness of alcoholism. I closed my eyes, I said a couple prayers, and I just got out of bed and I followed the feet as you guys taught me to do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Got in the shower, that was something I never used to do. I put on clean clothes, I didn't used to have those before I got sober. I did about 24 minutes of prayer and meditation. That was not something I used to do before I got sober. I did not have a God of my own conception. I texted a few alcoholics, I read some books, doing the things that we do. Had a little tea, went to a job, not something I used to have before getting sober. On time, imagine that. And all of these things you have taught me to do one day at a time through working spiritual principles. And it just blows me away to look at that and give it some perspective. So that's what today has been like. It was a good day at work. Gave my employer an honest day's work, tried my best, was honest. Talked to another alcoholic halfway through, did meditation on my lunch, and I went to the rectory next door. That's pretty cool if you want to check it out. Did some prayer before coming up here. So that's kind of my day in a recap. And so what was it like, right? I lost the ability to control and enjoy my drink. One was too many, 1,000's never enough. You guys have heard the same story over and over again. That's my story. I'm not special. I'm just a run-of-the-mill alcoholic. Before coming to AA, I thought it was special. That's for sure. I remember one of the first times I consumed alcohol. It was I saw the adults doing it, and I wanted to feel what I thought that they were feeling, and I wanted a little escape. And so a friend of mine stole a bottle of booze, and we tried to drink it, and we didn't know what to do with it. And so we mixed it with some juice and tried to do what we saw the people doing. And I think that was probably 11 or 12 years old, and commenced to get a little lighter. Didn't feel like at 12 years old, like I had the whole world on my shoulders, not so much responsibility, felt a little more peace and ease in my own skin. And after we finished that bottle, I tried to get my friend to go back and steal another one. But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to go to bed. After drinking a fifth of Bombay Sapphire for a 12-year-old, it's probably a normal reaction to want to go to bed. I didn't think so. That was my best friend, Zach. I didn't talk to him for a long time after that. Probably not a normal reaction. And then getting into high school, unfortunately, my brother, I was experimenting. My brother unfortunately passed away of drug and alcohol-related death when I was pretty young, freshman year. And I kind of used that as an excuse to, just retreat from the world, seek more alcohol and taking drugs and alcoholically. Essentially, that led me to get more and more consequences. So I'll fast forward, essentially there was blackouts, there was times where, I would do things under the influence I wouldn't have done sober. And when I left the house, the intention was to have a couple beers, right? And doing it with the friends. But the next morning when I was waking up, I couldn't find my pants, and everyone was mad at me, and I had to go and try and figure out where are my pants and why does it even matter? And that was guilt, shame, and remorse. And I would say things I didn't mean, or I would hurt people's feelings and disregard that. And then the way that I dealt with that is I would just pretend it wasn't happening, deny. If I can't remember, then this self-management that I'm doing is gonna just close my eyes, close the padlock on the door, and just pretend it didn't happen. It's full speed ahead. And so essentially, one of the last tricks I had, or near then, was basically alcohol and taking drugs alcoholically led me to a place where I lost 4 consecutive jobs in a row. I wasn't employable anymore. I was living in this garden shed. It was a luxurious garden shed. But no running water, no power, sleeping bag, and basically doing what I had to do to get by. And I had this deep wind, this cold wind blowing through the center of me, and I was inherently not okay. From the moment that I came to the moment that I got that drink that I thought that I needed, I was not okay. And I felt like an open sore. I felt like my Russian maelstrom of thinking and the very self-critical, and you guys probably remember. And then I would get that drink or whatever it was I thought I was seeking, and I couldn't start my day until I had it. Sometimes that would take me an hour. When you're not employed, it's kind of harder. It was my experience. Maybe it'd take me an hour, maybe it'd take me 2 days. And then I would get that relief that I was looking for. It would be very short-lived. And just before I got sober, I was having 3 or 4 day benders where I would just be blacked out, going strange places, doing strange things. And there came a point where I was like, all right, this needs to stop. I can't do this anymore. And essentially, I told myself, all right, I'm not going to drink. Today, I'm not going to drink. And I went to the friend's house, and they had, a 6-pack of beer, and I was like, oh yeah, it's only 6 beers. That isn't enough for me anyway. And around the campfire, and then I see one person drinks a beer, 5 beers. It's like, okay, I'm not drinking today. We're good to go. One more person, 4 beers. One more person, 3 beers. And then there's 1 beer left, and the guy is sipping on it. I'm like, okay, I'm not drinking today. There's no more beers. I'm good. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't contented. I wasn't being served to other people. And so, the guy's sipping on his half beer, and I'm like, well, if I still needed to, when he's not looking, I can steal his half a beer if I really want to, but I'm not drinking today. And then more beer shows up later on, and they asked me if I wanted one, and all bets were off. I think I blacked out again that night, and I didn't understand why. And I thought that I had some kind of a psychological issue, which kind of deep. And essentially, the last vendor I had was at this laundromat, and I was blacked out, and I used my pocket knife to open up the machine, and I was trying to fix the machine. I think that's what I thought. And I opened up the drawer, and the coins were all there, and I was like, oh, jackpot! I'm gonna do my laundry for free. So I don't remember very much of this, very spotty, but the cameras remembered really well. And this fast forward to the police department showed me the camera on his phone. I was like, oh, that's not me. They're like, we think it is. So they arrested me on felony burglary for that one. And thank goodness, right? that opened it up for me to get some consequences. I tried to escape from jail. That didn't work, essentially. They got mad at me. And it wasn't my first time to jail, but hopefully it was my last. And essentially from there, it opened up. So like to get the criminal charges away, they opened up opportunity to go to rehab. And so then I had this opportunity, and I went to this place in Redwood City called Sequoia Center. Sequoia Center, and that place saved my life. You know, I didn't really want to go, but I didn't have anything going on for me back at my home. And so essentially, there I was, you know, and I was very uncomfortable in my own skin, and I thought everyone was talking about me. And I brought my alcoholism with me, but I was dry. And you know, I was there for 62 days, and I learned a lot about self and manifestations of self, and I learned about you know, coping skills and tools and stuff. And when I got in there, they suggested that I move to a sober living environment, brain services for men here in San Rafael. So that's how I wound up in Brain 10 years ago somehow. I guess just haven't left. And so, you know, I moved into the sober living house, and a week after I was there, I was all lit up again. And I didn't understand why. I was like, oh, I went to treatment, I did rehab, like, how come I got drunk, you know? And the particulars of how that happened aren't really that significant. I would just tell you that I wasn't working with a sponsor, I wasn't in the book, I wasn't going to regular meetings regularly, I was just doing sober living house, an outpatient, and that wasn't enough to keep this alcoholic sober. So I got a sponsor, essentially, and I came back to the house, and I really had this like hopeless sense to me, because when I had that drink, it didn't produce an effect. And so essentially, like, it got to this point before I got sober that like I could, you know, drink all this booze, I could do all these substances, and like it would either black me out, but it wouldn't give me relief anymore. And so I was at this jumping off point, and it was pretty horrendous. So here I am, sober living environment, talk to a sponsor. And we started reading this book, and I didn't really understand it, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with a proctologist, just another dude who failed at the Wall Street, and like, what do I have in common with these guys? You know, the A's are cold, and like, you know, people talk about God in a meeting, and I like have to use the bathroom, and it was just, that was just where I was. And I considered myself atheist. And so I just kept coming back to the meetings because I was in the sober living house, and I had this sponsor now, and he had these expectations for me. And so, you know, I had this like, oh, I need approval thing, right, going on deep inside of me. So I wanted to get his approval, so I did what he suggested. Not because it was good for me, not because I wanted to stay sober, just because those are my circumstances. And it wasn't until I started going to regular meetings regularly, and I heard someone tell my share from the podium that I actually started to identify as an alcoholic. And I actually heard someone talk about the pain, suffering, guilt, and remorse of, you know, a week or a month ago, and how like they couldn't remember that when they needed to remember it. And there was this mysterious mental blank spot, and I was like, oh, this stuff actually like makes sense to me. Like, and I went to the speaker, and it was just like Indian, like guy from India, and he's well-to-do, and I went up to him, and I was like, oh yeah, I really related to your share. He was talking about being a fraud, and how he didn't fit in, and how he felt like everyone in the room that he was in had like a meeting before he got into, and they were privy to information he wasn't privy to. He felt like he was an outsider, and he couldn't have a real connection with other human beings. And I was like, oh man, that's me. Like, how does he know about that? He's gonna read my journal and stuff? Like, and so I wasn't even journaling. And so like I go and talk to this guy, and you know, I ask him questions like, oh yeah, like how does this all work and everything? And basically he says to me, you know, keep coming back, kid. And maybe you're an alcoholic. And so I'm working with the sponsor, and we get to step one, and he asked me, you know, have you lost the ability to control and enjoy your drinking simultaneously? And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I pretty much have. Like that, you know, I wanted to do one beer, and I couldn't, and that happened countless times over years and years, and I could just never really keep it together. And then he asked me if my life was unmanageable. I was like, whoa. Like, you know. And he said, well, let's look at your experience, you know. And I was like, fair enough. And I've been talking with him. You know, he got to know all he could about me in the beginning. So I told him about the 5150 where I was on hold at the hospital after I had wrecked my car on alcohol, and then they had me in the hospital and they let me go, and I went and drank that night. And I told him about the 6 wrecked cars in 6 years, and I told him about dropping out of school and broken hearts in relationships, and how my family wouldn't talk to me anymore, how I was homeless, how I was unemployed. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're not Carlos at all. And he said, well, let's look at the general manager of Justin Dievelman Liability Corporation. How's this management going? And when you put it in those terms, I was like, oh no, my life is unmanageable. But that was really a relief, because then he said, well, that's great news, because we have a solution for your problem. Only this problem is what AA has to offer. So here you go. We're gonna go to step 2. And in step 2, he said, all right, basically what you have to do now is you have to go to AA meetings, you have to call me, we're gonna keep working the steps. You can read the big book, you can do meditation, you can do prayer, you can talk with other alcoholics, you can do fellowship, you can do commitments, yeah? And these are the things that are going to keep you in step 2. Because now that you have decided you're an alcoholic, you have all these free tools at your disposal. And I was like, oh, that's what AA is? It's like, yeah. So I was like, okay. So we did step 2 while reading through the book, and we looked at my drinking career, first, doc's opinion, first 64 pages of the big book, and basically, we would read the book and he would prose it. He would read it and then he'd pose me a question out of what we just read, and I thought that was kind of annoying. Because we just read this, but that was how we worked the steps. I didn't even know it at the time. We were working already. I'm like, okay. So come to step 3, and I was like, I don't believe in God, and this and that, and I thought that you had to believe in God to do step 3. So he talked to me about that, and he told me what his conception was, and he had me do this little exercise, like what are the properties of a higher power that you do believe in, however inadequate is a sufficient place to start. And so, I had something like, sense of humor, all loving and forgiving, and, I found that piece of paper a little while ago. It's very spiritual for being 7 months sober. And so, so from that point, we were going to try and affect communication and a relationship with this thing that was greater than myself, that was going to be for me, and I couldn't while using these tools. And I was like, oh, I can get my head around that. So we started doing that, and then it comes to the inventory, and I balked. And I tried doing the talk my way through the steps, instead of write it down, and that really wasn't giving me relief. So my kind and patient sponsor sat down there with me while week after week, we would, every time he showed up from San Francisco to San Francisco, we would write it out. And thank God for that. He's no longer sober today. He went out on heroin and then got sober and then went out again. But he got me sober, and thank goodness for that. And thank God for service today. Hey, so essentially got through that, and I thought there was gonna be this burning bush, right? I thought oh yeah, after I reach step 5, my hair's gonna light on fire, I'm gonna see the eye of Ra or something, and that just wasn't my experience. Suddenly I have the capability to comprehend a little bit more about myself, and to see some behaviors that came up, and to accept life on those terms. Instead of the world needing to change for me to be okay, I can change. And that was incredible. Because looking at that 4th column, where I've been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened, I'd never looked at that before. My life was living on the first 2 columns of the inventory. And to bring in this other thing, and what he told me is that to yourself, the 4th step was or the 5th step was to yourself, to God, and another person. And the other person was the last one on the list. I was like, oh, that's profound. And so moving through there, character defects, I made a list and did the 7-step prayer, and it went right over my head. And that was the first time through. And since then, I've learned about these other books like Drop the Rock, which has been super, super helpful, and through 12-step with learning to work with others to try and attempt to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me so much. And what a beautiful model AA is, where it's this great recycler, where it takes me, this compost pile, we'll just say, useless, unemployable, just sucking all the resources of everyone around, not adding and contributing anything, and it puts me to use in 12-step work, where my greatest suffering is suddenly a gold, when I can use that experience to help another alcoholic or to help them get sober. So, and he started making amends. He had to write these letters, and that was a really cathartic experience for me. Essentially, because like I was all messed up. Like I had these conceptions about things I'd done under the influence. One of them was I thought I killed my grandfather. That was a heavy burden. Through the 12 steps, I found out I didn't actually do that. So that was very nice, to put it lightly. And yeah, I got an opportunity to make amends, you know, and like I was kind of balking on the amends, but when I went to the door, you know, it was like it really affirmed my third step because, you know, my mind was telling me, physiologically it was like, don't go and do this, don't go and do this. Whatever you do not go to this person and make amends. And then I would pray, say the third step prayer, and I'd walk up to the door, and I would do the amends, or I'd go to the cafe and do the amends, or I'd have the money and I'd pay back the money. And suddenly, like when I was walking out of there, I felt like $1 million, like 10 million, priceless experience. And that really affirmed like all that prayer I'd done before actually works. Because on my own powers, like, I was just insufficient. I couldn't pull that off. And then in step 10, I've learned about like spot check inventory. That's something that my sponsors have been working on lately. Like when I become irritable, restless, and discontent in the moment is a great opportunity. When the book says on page 84, it's like now, yeah, like right away when this stuff happens. Pause, yeah. I have an opportunity to like turn away from self or the service of others, talk to another alcoholic if I need to. Like what a marvelous program, you know. Like I was just used to like drinking a beer when I had a problem, man. And then in September 11, it's been about increasing the conscious contact. And the book has these great ways of talking about it through prayer and meditation. Any religion worth its salt is going to have these things involved. And you know, it's whether I'm doing it or not. You know, if I meditated for the day, then my sponsor tells me that it's a success. You know, regardless of like the outcome, regardless of how I feel, regardless of what I think about it, regardless of like how I spiritualize it or whatever. If I do it, it's success. And I found that to be true. And in step 12, carrying this message to other alcoholics. Man, I did not know this was available for fun and for free, right? Like, you know, to be properly armed with the facts about myself and then take them to another alcoholic and get their attention, right? Because when they see that I know all about the drinking game, I know about hiding the bottles when there's no one else living at my house. Yeah, when we talk about like, you know, running from the cops and getting away and then going and getting drunk as a victory, or you know, all the insanity that alcoholism is, and then like also learning about the book that you guys are talking about, like, you know, talking about the allergy of the body, the compulsion of the mind, the thinking that leads to the drinking. You know, like that's still my biggest problem, and kind of where I'm at today is. You know, I can still be a victim of the delusion that the rest satisfaction happens out of this world if I manage well, you know. But as I talked about in the step 3 experience, for me is like I'm no longer in the management business. You know, we have a new employer being all powerful to provide what we need. If we kept close to him and perform his work slow, that's what you guys taught me. And so, how close am I staying to him, and how well am I performing his works? And that's kind of what I review, what you guys have taught me to review in step 10. So. Probably getting close to time. A minute?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a lot of talking. And what a beautiful thing, you know. Like, thank goodness, like, I didn't have to, like, shave my head and still go to the airport. Or, like, thank goodness it was, like, you know, like, I didn't have to meet, like, His Holiness the Dalai Lama to get sober, or John F. Kennedy to get sober, or like Martin Luther King gets sober, that I just needed to meet like another alcoholic, yeah. And then something spiritual happens there, and suddenly like I get some relief, you know. When we talk about the solution, and then we have the common peril, we can talk about that. And then, and in closing, I want to say this: that like, you know, I talked about in the beginning, like I thought myself an agnostic, an atheist, and I didn't even know what those terms actually meant. But now I have a relationship with a higher power, yeah, and I choose to call that higher power God, you know, many different names, God, whatever, right? Maybe the name will change during the day, That is something that I believe in today, yeah? And I have an experience of that. It talks about after the Fist of Promises, we've had spiritual belief, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. So, like, is that my experience? Yes, that's my experience. And like, do I, feel like high on God all the time? No. But what I do have is He set of tools that you guys have given me, where I can like pack into the stream of life. I can turn to you guys when I'm in need, or like when I'm, full,